Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. In southern Ukraine, a recent Ukrainian attack has fundamentally reshaped the battlefield, altering not just the front line, but the broader strategic outlook in the region. This is more than a tactical strike. It is shifting the power dynamics in Zaporizhzhia and nearby areas, potentially redefining how both sides will fight in the months ahead. Until now, the Southern Front had been relatively stable in terms of major breakthroughs, but that is changing. Ukrainian forces have launched coordinated efforts along key axes, particularly around Orikhiv, Novodanylivka, Novotokmachka, and Novopokrovka, and have reportedly consolidated gains, pushing back entrenched Russian positions. These are not isolated skirmishes. They reflect a deliberate push by Ukraine to regain territory and disrupt Russian entrenchment. The gains near Orikhiv show that Ukraine is not just defending, but reforming its posture, taking proactive steps to reclaim ground and secure more favorable lines. One of the most striking new developments is the Huliaipole offensive, which began in September 2025. Huliaipole has long been a front-line city, but the dynamics are changing. Rather than attacking head-on from the south, Russian forces are now advancing from the east, a shift that aims to outflank Ukrainian defenses in Zaporizhzhia Oblast. This tactical pivot by Russia indicates it is trying to avoid the strongest parts of Ukraine's main defensive line, while exploiting sectors that may be less fortified. At the same time, reports are emerging that despite this maneuver, Ukraine is managing to defend and even consolidate some of its positions. In the Novodanylivka, Shiroko-Balka, and Novotokmachka-Novopokrovka directions, Ukrainian forces say they are consolidating gains, using artillery strikes effectively and conducting counter-battery fire on identified Russian targets. This suggests that rather than crumbling under pressure, the Ukrainian ground forces are adapting to the changing Russian strategy. Another key factor reshaping the battlefield is how both sides leverage terrain, reconnaissance, and asymmetric tactics. In the Novopavlovka axis, Ukrainian defenders have used a combination of anti-tank guided missile teams, drones, and minefields to intercept infiltrating Russian forces. These tactics make the most of the local geography, wooded areas, limited road access, and complicate Russian movement, diminishing the effectiveness of large mechanized assaults. Meanwhile, on the Russian side, there are signs of a growing reliance on infiltration tactics. According to Ukrainian intelligence, sabotage and reconnaissance groups are increasingly carrying out operations, slipping into evacuated or deserted villages, laying low in basements, waiting for the right moment to strike or to accumulate a foothold before larger forces move in. This kind of patient maneuvering signals that Moscow is not just relying on brute force, but is thinking in terms of long-term positioning and attrition. In terms of casualties and equipment losses, the stakes are high. In one particularly intense engagement in the south, Ukrainian forces reportedly destroyed 29 units of enemy equipment and inflicted heavy personnel losses around 140 troops on an assault force. That sort of damage not only weakens immediate enemy strength, but also sends a clear message. Ukraine can absorb attacks and strike back effectively. On a broader level, this reshaping of the southern battlefield is influencing Ukraine's strategic calculus. President Zelensky and Ukrainian commanders are increasingly framing the current moment as an opportunity for decisive action. Rather than simply holding defensive lines, Ukraine seems intent on leveraging its recent advances to force bigger shifts, both militarily and potentially politically. The aerial and drone dimension is also significant. The Southern Front is not just a ground war. Ukraine's use of unmanned aerial vehicles, combined with reconnaissance and counter-battery strikes, is playing a major role in enabling these new operations. The war in this region is becoming increasingly asymmetric, with smaller, highly mobile drone assets complementing traditional artillery and infantry. The shifting battlefield in the south raises long-term implications. If Ukraine can hold and expand its position around Orikhiv and Novodanylivka, it could create a launching pad for further operations, potentially threatening Russian supply lines or forcing Moscow to reallocate its forces. At the same time, Russia's reconfigured tactics, combining infiltration, terrain exploitation, and maneuver from unexpected axes, could produce vulnerabilities for Ukraine, especially if Kiev overextends. There are broader political and psychological effects as well. Russian advances, if sustained, can bolster Moscow's narrative of momentum. Conversely, Ukrainian gains, if consolidated, strengthen Kiev's negotiating position. The combat dynamics in this sector may influence diplomatic leverage, particularly as the war enters another critical phase. Success is not guaranteed for either side. For Ukraine, holding newly gained ground requires not just military grit, but sustained logistics, effective command, and continued international support. For Russia, the challenge lies in converting more subtle infiltration tactics into durable control, avoiding overcommitment in terrain that may not favor its mechanized strength. In short, what is happening in southern Ukraine is not just a series of battles, but a broader transformation in how the war is fought. Ukraine's recent attack and consolidation show that Kiev is not simply reacting, it is proactively reshaping the battlefield. This could mark a turning point in the southern front, with significant implications for the trajectory of the war. Thanks for watching. If you found this helpful, make sure to like, subscribe, and drop a comment on what you think will happen next. Will Ukraine solidify its gains, or will Russia counter?